Good afternoon. We're breaking in right now to bring you a PBA press conference. President Pat Lynch is taking questions regarding the grand jury's decision. Let's go ahead and listen in.
Everybody in? Everybody good? Say when? Okay, guys. Thank you for being here this morning. We want to start by speaking of a couple issues that have been going on the last number of hours. First, we'd like to start by thanking the jurors in the grand jury in Staten Island for sitting at a table similar to this and making decisions based on the facts that were presented at that table. Not looking at just one snippet of a video that doesn't tell a whole story, but taking the time to listen to every bit of evidence, to listen to the testimony of every witness, including police officer Panto, for taking the medical examiner's report and reading it impassionately and coming to the same decision, the just and right decision of no true bill. What we've seen the last number of hours, while everyone who was not in that jury room questions their decision that was based on the facts impassionately, the way it's supposed to and should be. But what's also been lost is the character of police officer Daniel Pantaleo. What's not being told is what kind of man and what kind of person and what kind of professional police officer he is. He's a resident of this great city. He's a resident of the borough of Staten Island. He lives in those neighborhoods. He's college educated here in this city. He's a mature police officer who's motivated literally by serving the community. He literally is an Eagle Scout. And I think that story's not being told, that a city resident, a New York City police officer, went out and did a difficult job there, a job where there's no script, and sometimes with that, there's tragedy that comes. And we once again say, like we have from the beginning of this was a tragedy. There was a loss of life. And no one ever wants to lessen the fact that there was a loss of life. A loss of life of a man who lives in this city, a citizen, and a father and a husband. And that tragedy to that family is very serious. And we never, ever lessen that. But it's also a tragedy for this police officer who has to live with that death. A police officer who went out to do a difficult job, and all that you don't want to happen actually happened. We've heard a lot of conversations by the mayor of the city of New York yesterday after this decision came down. And he said a number of things. But what we did not hear is this. We did not hear that you cannot go out and break the law. What we did not hear is that you cannot resist arrest, that's a crime. We did not hear that that's why these police officers were at that location that day. Because the community called and complained and said there's a problem at that location, and we were asked to respond. We heard that we need to teach our children when they're on the streets of New York, and that's true. We need to teach our children to respect New York City police officers. We need police officers to go out and protect our children, and that too is true. But we shouldn't be teaching our children that they should be afraid of New York City police officers, because we are the ones. We too are fathers and mothers who go out in that street. We are the ones that are protecting our children, your children, all the children, from the criminal elements. That's who our sons and daughters should be afraid of. And we should respect New York City police officers that go out and do a difficult job to protect them. We need to teach our children and everyone that you cannot resist arrest. Even if you believe that the arrest is unjust, there's mechanisms to do that. There's mechanisms to complain. It's not on that corner, on that street, at that location. You cannot resist arrest. that's a crime, and you will be placed under arrest. Police officers do not have the option to walk away. If the mayor wants to change policies and wants us to stand down against crime, then say that. It's his policies that we go out and we enforce, and the laws of the state of New York. If they want otherwise, say it. But our police officers are out there doing a difficult job protecting all our sons and daughters every day, and they do it well. The mayor said we need the support of the community, and he's right. We do. It's the community that we serve. It's the community that dials 911. It's the community that complained that day that brought us to that tragic corner at that time. We need the support of the community, but we need the support of the mayor as well. We need the support of the city hall and our elected leaders. New York City police officers last night who were out there protecting everyone's rights to protest peacefully on the streets. And we had folks, protesters and otherwise, thanking us for doing that. But what we need is a mayor to stand up with and for us as well. To say that we support New York City police officers who are protecting your rights to protest. What police officers felt yesterday after that press conference is that they were thrown under the bus. That they were out there doing a difficult job in the middle of the night protecting the rights of those to protest, protecting our sons and daughters, and the mayor was behind microphones like this, throwing them under the bus. He needs to support New York City police officers. He needs to say that teach our children, every last one of our children, our sons and daughters, to respect police officers. You cannot resist arrest, because resisting arrest leads to confrontation. Confrontation leads to tragedy. That's the support we need. Our members, 60% of our members, live in the neighborhoods and are citizens of this great city. 100% of our members are out there putting themselves at risk each and every day. They earned it. They deserve it. The mayor should give that support. We, too, are citizens. Questions?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
There's retraining that is underway, and the new Deputy Commissioner Julian is talking about being more polite. Suggestion is less aggressive. How do you feel about the training? Do you have any input on how this training is going to be?
We are always in favor of training. It helps us do our job effectively, efficiently, and properly. So I believe we should constantly and continuously train our members. But the training also has to be in the real world. Again, when we're out in the streets, some citizens we deal with that may have made a bad choice or a bad decision or done something that's not exactly right, they respect the police officers, and they comply with what they're being asked. But not all. Sometimes we deal with criminals. And to say, excuse me, sir, can I search you, is not realistically, because the response back is going to be, no, you can't, you're the police and I'm a perp, and you'll not search me. That's not in the real world. The real world is when we're dealing with ordinary citizens on the street, they leave satisfied. We need to hear those stories thousands and thousands of times every day in every borough, no matter what the economics of that neighborhood is. They leave satisfied. But we also deal with criminals, and they're only satisfied when they tear something down. Anarchists who are running the streets that want to lead regular protesters into violent protesters, all they want to do is destroy. Some want to protest, and we respect that right, and we'll protect that right. We will, and we always have. But those amongst that crowd that are anarchists just want to tear down. There's not an answer at the end or a problem to be solved in their mind. Their solved is when they say smoke behind them, and then they leave. Then the rest of us have to remain behind to put it all back together.
Pat,
Yes, sir.
Pat,
Sorry.
front page of today's Daily News is "We Can't Breathe." This has become a national story. The President of the United States is weighing in. Do you feel that the emotions that some, particularly in the African American community, are feeling today are valid?
No, I respect that emotion, and I respect that emotion because that's all they're seeing and reading. But we're leaving out the fact, as we've discussed many times, this was a police officer who was sent to that location to do a difficult job. Had to bring a person to the ground that said, I'm not going, and was resisting arrest. While bringing that person to the ground, yes, they said, we can't breathe. But the police officers and the EMS did what they're supposed to do at that time. If you're speaking, you can breathe. Unfortunately, he died for a number of reasons, and as the grand jury saw and the medical examiner said, it was not a chokehold that killed that person. So we feel badly that there was a loss of life. But unfortunately, Mr. Gardner made a choice that day to resist arrest. He's been arrested before. He knew that he'd go to the station house and get a desk appearance ticket and be out by the end of the day. But unfortunately, the choice was not a good choice, and unfortunately, we all live with the tragedy of that death.
Pat,
Yes, sir.
A little bit about the federal investigation. That's the comment, of course.
Yeah.
Commissioner Bratton talked about the internal affairs investigation. Obviously, your union reps will represent him in that. Can you just talk about what your hopes are for that and for the federal case?
What we want in any review, whether it's a federal review or it's the grand jury in Staten Island that made a courageous decision based on the facts, is that we get a fair review. Whether the federal government is looking at the facts won't change. The testimony won't change. It's going to go forward, and the feds, while they look at this, need to look at that same testimony, that same medical examiner's report. And if they do that impassionately, just on the facts, ma'am, as they say, then we'll come to the same decision as well. And it was a just decision, a difficult decision, we understand. But it was a just decision. Why? Because it was based on the facts that were on the table, not what's going on in the street or not what others may want it to be.
Pat, what exactly did the mayor say that you found upsetting? He spoke about his son, he spoke about concern for his safety, but I just might be missing it. Where exactly did he say that officers...
He spoke about we have to teach our children that their interaction with the police and that they should be afraid of New York City police officers. That's not true. We have to teach our children, our sons and our daughters, no matter who they look like, to respect New York City police officers. Teach them to comply with police officers, even if they feel it's unjust. That police officers are protecting them from the criminals on the street. That's what we do. Our city is safe because of police officers. All our sons and daughters walk the streets in safety because of police officers. They should be afraid of the criminals. That's what we should be teaching them. Yes, ma'am.
Your officers, despite feeling this way, were out last night on the streets dealing with protesters.
Mm-hmm.
Two questions for you. The policy announced by NYPD on Tuesday was that protesters weren't going to be allowed to go out in the streets. They had to stay on the sidewalks. We saw them all out in the streets.
Mm-hmm.
Are your officers frustrated about this, and do you think that the policy has been muddled at all in dealing with these protesters?
The policy was you can walk on the sidewalk, and if you commit a crime, you'll be placed under arrest. And yes, police officers are frustrated that they see people flowing into the streets, blocking the West Side Highway, cars still coming down, people afraid because there's a crowd all around them as they march on through. We want to do our job effectively. We want to do our job, and we're flexible. New York City police officers understand the emotion on the street, and we're very flexible in how we do our job, and we adapt to those times. It's frustrating when we hear it won't be allowed to happen, and then it does. But then again, police officers are flexible. We understand. If City Hall wants otherwise, just say it. We'll follow our orders, that's for sure.
Can you give us an idea of where the disciplinary process will go from here?
It's more of an attorney question, but it will go through the departmental process, a review from there. They'll take all the investigative materials that the grand jury had as well, and they'll take a look of that. Because remember, at this point, it was a secret in the grand jury the way it should be, and they'll review all those facts. Yes,
my
ma'am.
question is,
Yes.
what are your hopes?
Our hopes is, again, just like the federal probe that may go on, whether it's departmental or anyone else that's going to review this, that it's done fairly on the facts. That's all we ever ask as police officers, is that it's done fairly just on the facts. We also want to commend the District Attorney of Staten Island, who's not allowed, I take it, is not allowed to release that information in the transcripts and the evidence from the grand jury, but he's going to a judge to have it released if it's a judge's decision if they allow that. We welcome that, because we've never been afraid of the facts. We've never been afraid of the testimony, and we want everyone in the city to see what those grand jurors had at the table, how they came to that decision. And they took the video, and they watched it, and they took it frame by frame, I'm sure. But then they looked at the totality of the evidence as well. The totality of a person that was resisting arrest, a police officer that was doing a job, a police officer that was doing what he was taught in the police academy using a takedown maneuver. It was textbook training, and that's what he did. And I believe the grand jurors were courageous in listening to his testimony and all the other evidence that was on the table as well.
Pat, what's the difference between a takedown and a chokehold? Can you
A
explain
chokehold is directly around the neck and brought to the ground where it restricts your breathing. If you look at the video impassionately, it was a seatbelt or a takedown maneuver. One arm was under the gentleman's underarm and the other over the shoulder coming down. Now they're bringing him down to the ground as well. Remember, a shorter police officer bringing down a large man to the ground. And when he could release that seatbelt maneuver, he did. And they did what they were supposed to do. They called for EMS. And remember, you do not do CPR on a breathing person. So that was a takedown maneuver, textbook as we're trained. Yes, sir.
What's your response to allegations that from the critics that the real problem is an institutionalized racism on behalf of the NYPD?
New York City police officers, first off, go out and protect everyone's right. I've been a police officer for 31 years. I've never sat in a radio car and a job came over and anyone ever asked, what color are they, what creed are they, who do they love, who do they live with? It's never, ever happened. We respond to the call, we do it well. The other piece of it is our police department is the neighborhood, is the city. We live here and we look like everyone out in the neighborhood as well. We're a multi-ethnic neighborhood. So is the police department. Again, I've never heard that question asked in 30 years.
What's the worst thing that can happen to the officer from the NYPD investigation? Or
The worst thing that can happen is that they do not base their decisions on the evidence, and then he could get fired. And remember, we're talking about a police officer that lives in the city, does what he was trained to do, literally an Eagle Scout. He's the model of what we want a police officer to be. And remember, sometimes tragedies happen when we're out in the street. There's never, ever a script. There's no routine job whatsoever. And many police officers have given their lives going on that job and making the decisions in seconds that they have to make on a regular basis.
Pat, what do you think of the mayor putting a personal touch on his comments about the police when he brought his son into the discussion again?
I can understand the concern for a son, and we need to teach all our sons how to interact with the police officers. But New York City police officers have to teach their sons and daughters as well. We have sons and daughters that don the uniform of a New York City police officer, and they need to come home at the end of the day as well. And there's no routine job. So we have to be on guard always for those that may try to set us up, those that may not comply, and we as police officers may not go home. We all have sons and daughters as well. And you know there's a tradition in the police department of mother and son, father and son coming on the New York City Police Department. So we understand the concern for sons and daughters. We have it as police officers, and we have it for our neighbors as well. We do our job well out there. We do it thousands upon thousands of times each and every day. That's something I repeat constantly because it's true.
Pat, you say he's a hero cop, he's a model cop. The mayor calls Gardner a, quote, good man. According to his record, is he a good man?
What we look at is the record that he had. We don't go out in the streets to say if someone's a good man or not. The citizens called, and we go there and we respond to it. He broke the law. We were sent there by the community, and we tried to take him into custody and go from there. What he should have done and what anyone should do is duke it out in front of the judge. That's the process that's there. What my concern is that Police Officer Panto is a good man as well, and that story hasn't been told. Again, all the things that I said right up to being an Eagle Scout, a professional police officer, a member of that same community, reared in that same community by his parents. They're part of the fabric of society, and he's trying to continue to strengthen that weave of society. That's what my concern is, that he's not being portrayed as a good man because he is a good man. And more importantly for us all here today, he's a professional police officer. Yes, sir.
Have you spoken to Pantaleo since the decision? What has he said? What can you impart to us about the conversation?
I did speak to Officer Pantaleo today, and Daniel was obviously relieved that this step of the process has gone by, and he was thankful to the grand jurors from his community that made the decision that they did, a courageous decision. It's difficult to read the paper in the morning and read what you're saying and then know that you'll be criticized for the decision you'll make at a table like this at the grand jury. But he's also concerned that the story moving forward is not tainted by things other than the facts. So he's concerned. He's hearing on the radio and the TV that there's going to be a federal probe. He's hearing that people are calling for him to be fired. So that's always a concern for a working man or woman in this city.
What was his hopes to you?
His hopes is he wants to first off send the condolences to the family, which he did genuinely. It was his first opportunity to be able to say, "I'm sorry, there was a loss of life. That was never ever my intention when I went out in the street that day." That's his number one concern. And then personally, his concern is that he can also go on with his life, because this death will never go away for him. It'll always be in the back of his mind, and it'll make him a difficult job to do. But he's a professional police officer. We do this job every day, and it's difficult, and we do what we have to do. He wants to get back out and serve his community, and he should be allowed to.
How does he feel about the potential release of the...
I'm sorry? Well, I'll come back.
How does he feel about the potential release of the grand jury transcript?
He has no qualms about if that information is released, because it's the truth. He testified to the truth. He testified to what happened there. The medical examiner's report is what it is, and they saw that, and they made the right decision based on that. So he's not afraid of any of that testimony getting out, because he would like everyone to hear what the grand jurors heard that day. I understand legally, and it's a lawyer's question, whether the judge can and will do that. If we have any say in it, I'm sure we probably don't, but I would encourage the judge to make that decision, release that information, all of that information, not just a video, a part of a video, all the information that those grand jurors looked at.
And how hard will it be to fight to get him back on the street?
I'm sorry, sir?
Do you have any update on the Brooklyn car fire, and also how does this situation, what challenges does it provide when you're doing your job in other areas too?
I haven't gotten a briefing on if there was a car fire or not, but that cannot and should not be tolerated, because our members, we as police officers, and the citizens have a right to, park their car in the evening and come back and have it there, whether it's a criminal or someone that's trying to set it on fire. That doesn't get anyone's message out, whether we agree with that message or not. Burning someone's car is not it. They cannot and should not be allowed to cross that line. Our ordinary, regular citizens who are also protesting, we understand what they're doing. We'll protect their right to do that. But no one, don't allow those anarchists to step over that line and do something that'll taint any message that's out there. Have your grievances aired properly, quietly, professionally as protesters. This is America. But when you step over that line and do anything that's against the law, you should be placed under arrest.
Pat, what's the PBA going to do to support?
Do you believe that, speaking about the way the episode has impacted Officer Pantaleo's life, do you believe that the city, the mayoral administration, the police department puts officers out with the tools to succeed and survive in correct ways? And particularly, do you see a training element that might help in these kinds of low-level incidents on the street, low-level crime?
Look, yeah, we're the best trained police department in the country by far. Ask any police officer who has any uniform and any patch that's on their shoulder that we are the best at what we do. And we deal with protests, demonstrations, and issues every day by the thousands, and we do it well. So we encourage that training constantly and all the time. But what we do need, and what we're not hearing, is we need City Hall to support the police officers and tell the citizens and teach our children and teach the citizens, explain to the citizens that you need to support the police officers. They're going out doing the job. Again, look at last night. Protesters, we may not agree with their message, but we protected their right to do it, where even the protesters were thanking us for the patience that we had in a tough, difficult situation in the middle of the night. That's what they should be saying. He needs to be saying to those that will resist arrest, you cannot resist arrest. It's against the law. You'll be placed under arrest. And if you resist arrest, it leads to a dangerous confrontation. And dangerous confrontation leads to tragedies. Sometimes that tragedy is on the person that made the infraction. And sometimes that tragedy is the police officer as well, and we've had that as well. And also the tragedy on both sides. We live with the decisions we made. That family lives with the decision and the death. You cannot resist arrest. It leads to tragedy. That message and the support for police officers need to be put out there unequivocally. Unequivocally. Police officers feel like they've thrown under the bus after they had respect for the jury system, after they had respect for a difficult decision that they've made.
One more question in the corner over there. Is the union going to fight to get Panto on the street? What are you going to do?
Yes, we absolutely will. First, what we're going to fight, we'll go through the process. We respect the process. We want a fair hearing of the facts that the grand jurors heard. We do not want anything to pollute that process. We want just the facts in the jury room, just the facts in the police department, and not the fiction from the streets. Just the facts, not the fiction. The fiction. Definitely not any politics or any emotion. That's how you come to a good decision. The grand jury made that decision, and I might add, a courageous decision, and we thank them for it. It's a difficult job. We've always found that grand jurors take their ability, They take their mind, they take their common sense to the table, and they take their responsibility seriously, and we thank them for it. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate you taking the time to cover all the questions that are here.
We've just